Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on the CPWR Quarterly Data Report, Fall Injuries and Prevention in the Construction Industry. Today's presentation is based on our most recently quarterly data report, which was included in the description for this event, and it is available on our website, cpwr.com, in the publications section. We will review today the fatal and non-fatal fall injuries based on BLS data, fatal falls based on CPWR's Fatality Mapping project, and the National Safety Stand-Down to Prevent Falls in Construction. Our presenters today include Sue Dong, CPWR's Data Center Director, Gavin West, CPWR Research Analyst and Lead on the Fatality Mapping project, and myself, Jessica Bunting, Program Associate for Research to Practice and CPWR's point person on the Falls Campaign and Stand Down. So, as many of you probably know, this webinar is very timely because this week is the 2017 Stand Down. The Stand Down was conceived by OSHA in 2014 as part of the National Falls Campaign to raise awareness surrounding the severity of fall hazards in construction and the importance of preventing them. In a construction setting, the term safety stand down can be used to describe a wide variety of activities where normal work is paused and the entire site focuses on a particular safety issue. Some employers may use stand downs to call attention to specific hazards present on their site as an intervention. The campaign has adopted the use of the stand down to draw attention specifically to fall hazards in a nationwide week-long event. The campaign is currently in its 6th year, and the stand down is in its 4th, but as you will see in this presentation, we still have a lot of work to do. Okay. And with that, I will hand it over to Stu for a review of BLS data on fatal and non-fatal falls.
We need to know how many workers are working in construction, who they are, which groups are more likely to get injured, etc. That's why we always track construction employment in our surveillance. This bar chart shows that in 2016, 10.3 million workers were employed in construction, a 16% increase compared to its level in 2012. The overall construction employment is still lower than the pre-recession level, but Hispanic employment in construction reached 3 million in 2016, similarly or even slightly surpassing its peak level in 2007. Coinciding with the employment, the number of fatalities among construction workers climbed to 985 in 2015, about a 26% increase compared to number in 2011. Falls remain the leading cause of worker-related fatalities in construction, accounting for about 1/3 of the total number of fatalities in this industry. Between 2011 and 2015, the number of fall fatalities in construction increased about 36%, from 269 to 367. However, if you look at more detail in this chart, you would find the overall death numbers in construction increased by 5% from 2014 to 2015, but the number of fatal falls increased about 1%. BLS started to use a new injury and illness classification system in 2011. Because of the changes in the coding system, the category of fall injuries may not be directly comparable before and after 2011. Thus, we add a line here to get your attention for this change. Fall deaths in construction are more prevalent than in any other major industries. In 2015, fatal falls among construction workers accounted for about 46% of the total occupational fatalities in all industries in the United States. The total fatal falls was 800 deaths. In construction, falls to lower levels accounted for most of the fatal falls, on average about 96%. Between 2003 to 2015, 4,439 construction workers died from falling to a lower level. Both numbers and rates declined during the recession, but increased with the construction recovery. The category of falls to a lower level is relatively comparable according to the BIS new coding system. That's why we did not have a line on this chart. BIS started to provide information on the height of falls in 2011. We know that working at the height is very dangerous. The data shows over a third, or 38% of fatal falls in construction were from 15 feet or less. This indicates that a fall risk exists at low heights. Between 2011 and 2015, more than half of fall fatalities in construction were from 20 feet or less. In terms of falls, roofs counted about 1/3, falls from roofs counted about 1/3, and falls from ladders accounted for 24%. Overall, for roofs, ladders, scaffolds, and stagings, the falls from this accounted for 72% of fall fatalities in construction. By construction subsector, we know that roofing contractors always have a higher number of fatal falls. But the number, if you look at over these years, the number are relatively flat, on average about 66. However, in residential building, the fatalities due to falls increased from 26 to 61 during this time period, more than double. Roofers. I just talk about roofing contractors, which are based on the industry classification. And roofers, and we are talking about occupation. You know, not all the roofers are working in working for the roofing industry, and not the roofing industries are roofers. Roofers have the highest rate of fatal falls, but both the number and rate decreased in 2015 compared to 2014. I'd like to ask you why. I think this should be everybody's effort in fall injury intervention and prevention, and the ongoing from the 2014 to 2015, fatal falls jumped by 28% among Hispanic workers, but dropped by 10% among the non-Hispanic workers. Hispanic workers not only had a higher number of fall fatalities, but also had a higher rate of fall fatalities. In addition to Hispanic workers, foreign-born workers and self-employed workers also had an elevated risk of fatal falls. By age, we can see that the largest share of the fatal falls were among those who aged 45 to 54. But in terms of the rate, the older workers in general had a higher injury rate. It's particular for those who are 65 years and older. For the non-fatal injuries, the overall trends are similar to the fatality trends. Both the numbers and the rate of non-fatal falls dropped during the recession and then increased from 2011 to 2015 after the lowest level in 2010. By construction occupation, you can see the patterns of non-fatal falls and fatal falls are quite different. While construction labor handles the largest number of non-fatal falls, helpers handle the highest rate of non-fatal falls. The helpers are not in particular occupation, that can be helper to carpenters, helpers to roofers, etc. We just combine the numbers together because the one separate group, the number is very small. That's what I'd like to share with you. The data I presented were from the BRS, which represent the overall trend at the national level. The next, I will hand over the presentation to Gavin, who will talk about our findings from CPWR Fatality Maps. He will talk about more about geographical variation. Gavin, please.
Thank you, Sue, and good afternoon, everyone. So CPWR's interactive fatality maps can be found at the campaign website, which is stopconstructionfalls.com. 2 versions of the map are available for each year, going back to 2011 when we began mapping fatalities in construction. So one of the versions of the map includes different types of fatal construction injuries, while the other map contains only fatal falls. And users can scroll around the map, and they can zoom in or out, and they can also search for specific locations. And each of the pins, like you see on this slide, represents a construction worker who died on the job. Now, if you were to click on one of the pins, it would open a pop-up box with summary information similar to what you see here on this slide. So in this case, a 47-year-old male concrete and terrazzo finisher was repairing balconies in an apartment complex in Miami Beach, Florida. So at the time, he was working atop a swing stage scaffold without a means of fall protection when the roll of steel cable hoist line got caught in the wheels of a moving cement truck below. So unfortunately, this caused the scaffold to shift, and the employee then fell from the scaffold. Tragically, he didn't survive the injuries he sustained in the fall. So if you look towards the bottom left, we provide up to 4 different news links to news articles, which are one of the sources of information. So if we were to click on the 4th news report listed here, it would open this article from Durability and Design, which you can see in the photo shows the lopsided scaffold suspended from the building. Links to OSHA inspections are also provided when available. So if we were to click on that, it would open the full inspection link. Here's a portion of that. And in addition to other information that you could find in the inspection record, we see here that this particular investigation resulted in 5 violations, 4 of which were serious, resulting in a total penalty of about $31,000, which was later reduced to $17,000. So in terms of the uses of the map, well, they've received over 100,000 views to date combined, and the data that's used to create the maps are available to the public as downloadable spreadsheets, also on the campaign website. And so the maps have been used for raising awareness, increasing public access to fatality data, tracking recent deaths for the fall prevention campaign. And we've also heard from users of the map that they've used the maps as an effective tool while training workers on fall prevention. We know that they've been used in Workers' Memorial Day events and for stand-down activities as well. At this point, I'd like to mention that the news reports, which are featured and can be accessed through the map, can also tell a different story than the numbers alone. So they can help to remind us that, you know, these are real people behind the numbers, and they show up to work every day expecting to come home. With that said, we're going to get back to the numbers from the quarterly data report. So the CPWR Fatality Maps have provided access to information on 3,803 construction fatalities, including 1,276 falls over the past 6 years. These numbers may already strike you as high. In fact, these numbers only represent about 3/4 of all construction fatalities and about 2/3 of fatal construction falls that occurred from 2011 to 2015. BLS fatality data for 2016 are not yet available, but these CFOID data are scheduled for release towards the end of this year. The fatality maps are created using public data from OSHA investigations and news reports. And as you can see on the slide, both construction fatalities and also fatal falls, which are shown on the maps, have both increased since the beginning of the project. So this map shows all the fatal falls that have been mapped by CPWR since the project began, except for those in Hawaii, Alaska, and U.S. territories, which we also mapped falls in those locations as well. They're just not shown here. In a prior CPWR webinar, someone asked, when we showed a similar slide, why do fatal falls appear more prevalent in the eastern part of the country? So one thing is that it's important in terms of thinking of risk to separate overall numbers from rates. Just because the numbers are low in a particular state, you know, it doesn't mean that workers don't have a high risk and that the rates could be high. So since the maps do not capture all fatalities as well, one possible explanation why they seem to be more prevalent in the east is that news coverage could differ by location. For example, fatal falls in urban areas could be more likely to attract media attention. A second and probably more likely explanation is that there's more construction activity in urban areas rather than rural areas in general, putting a greater number of workers in larger cities at risk. So as you can see from the darker colored portions of this map, population density tends to be higher in the eastern United States. And also, fatal falls tend to cluster in and around large cities. For example, Dallas, Los Angeles, Houston, and Chicago as well. So here's a closer view of the 4 cities I just highlighted for you on the previous slide. So same as the last slide, the blue dots represent fatal falls, and the darker colors on the map signify higher population densities. So unfortunately, a large number of construction workers lost their lives due to a work-related fall in and around the cities shown here. And the same can also be said for many of the country's metropolitan areas. In the vicinity of Houston, which you can see in the bottom left panel, fatal falls were more heavily concentrated in the west. So we haven't examined whether there might be a specific reason for this apparent difference, but it might be a question worth asking. For the quarterly data report, we did take a closer look at New York City, which is one of the most densely populated areas in the country. We know from the Fatality Map that at least 51 construction workers died of a work-related fall in New York City since 2011. This map of the city's 5 boroughs shows us that many of these deaths occurred in Manhattan, which is shown in orange on the map. So to better understand the high concentration of fatal falls in this part of the city, we analyzed building permit data from the U.S. Census Bureau. As Sue explained earlier, a high proportion of fatal falls occur during residential building construction. So this chart illustrates a recent surge in residential building construction in the borough of Manhattan. What we see is that the post-recession building boom in Manhattan reached what was really an historic high in 2015, and that even surpasses the peak of the last building boom, which was in 2008, with around 97 new housing units approved that year through building permits. And what this local trend tells us is, this local trend in residential construction activity, it helps to explain the high number of fatal falls we identified in Manhattan since 2011. Furthermore, ongoing projects authorized in recent years could also indicate a high level of sustained residential construction activity in the years to come, putting a large number of workers at risk of a fall if preventive measures are not prioritized and put into place. Thank you for listening. With that, I'm going to hand the reins back over to Jessica.
Thank you, Gavin. All right. I am just going to talk briefly about the stand down and some data that we have that's in the quarterly data report. We have been collecting, and when I say we, I mean OSHA, CPWR, and NIOSH, have all been collecting data from a variety of sources. So our biggest one has been the OSHA stand-down Certificate of Participation database, which accounts for the state numbers you see on this map. So the darker the state, the more participation in the stand-down they have reported. It doesn't mean that they necessarily actually participated more, but we've heard about it more frequently. And we know when we combine all of these numbers with the other data sources, such as our success stories, independent reports from various companies and entities such as the U.S. Air Force, we know that just from the first 3 stand-downs, we reached more than 5 million workers, both nationwide and internationally. There has been participation in every state and territory and a lot of international participation as well, which was initially very unexpected. So, despite that, we obviously need to keep it going. So here are some additional data that shows the breakdown of companies and participants by type of construction. So you can see that we're not just reaching end users in construction, although commercial construction is obviously the #1 category here in red. We have a lot of government and non-construction participants, and we have heard anecdotally that there are a lot of general industry participants, mining participants, manufacturing, a lot of different areas that we didn't expect. So again, really great. And this year's stand-down probably has the most support and backing now that it's become a recognizable event every year. So we've really renewed our efforts to push out resources this year, and since the stand-down is this week, we don't have any data for it yet, but we can tell you that at this point, we've already gone through over 160,000 hard hat stickers and are still mailing out more, and that's just from CPWR. OSHA also has hard hat stickers and has been giving them out. So we are anticipating really high participation this year as well. And for those of you who are taking part, if you are not already aware of our resources, Gavin mentioned stopconstructionfalls.com. That is the campaign site where you can go for any number of materials to help participate. We do have an online ordering form for the stickers and hazard alerts. We also have a ton of other resources available. We have a 5-day plan. We're also tweeting out the different suggestions day by day. If you follow us on Twitter, we have a 1-page flyer, infographics, Gavin's Fatality Maps, the new NIOSH area lift simulator, a lot of stuff there. And we also have this year a new success story submission form. So for anyone who is participating in the stand down and would like to tell us about it afterward, please go to the link on the bottom of the screen and let us know, and we may follow up with you to do an article, and I think we will be doing a report based on the success stories this year as well to get sort of more data that is helpful to others who want to replicate events. And finally, there is also a smartphone app that for both iPhone and Android users. It has the same information that's available on stopconstructionfalls.com. It's just easier to access if you wanted to pull it up on a job site, and you can set it up for push notifications. There's also a place to share your success story and photos through the app as well. And with that, in conclusion, we obviously know that the stand down has reached millions of workers. It's a really important event, but clearly fall injuries and fatalities have increased, especially among Hispanic workers in residential construction and in big cities. So the campaign is still just as important as ever, and we hope that you all are participating this week or month. And with that, I will go ahead and start on the questions. We already have a few in here, so bear with me for a moment. Okay, the first question is, this has come up in OSHA 30 classes I teach. Why does OSHA distinguish between Hispanic workers in their statistics? And Sue, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that with regarding to the BLS data. It's not OSHA data, but
oh, you mean why we use the BLS data instead of OSHA's inspection data?
No,
is that the question?
Why is there a distinction between all workers and Hispanic workers is the question.
Why we have separated Hispanic workers and non-Hispanic workers, is that the question?
Yes, well, the question is why does OSHA, but I think it applies to all data.
All the data, why when we do the analysis, we separate Hispanic and non-Hispanic workers, is that the question? I just want first, when I understand the question before I answer it. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me briefly explain that. Based on our surveillance, we found Hispanic workers and other worker group in construction have quite different patterns in terms of demographics and injuries. So that's why usually when we do the analysis, we wanted to know what's going on with Hispanic and whether they're still the same and not. If I want to go back to the one slide, so let me say, I'd like to show you why. If you look at this slide, you would say Hispanic employment, maybe this is not the very nice view in this combined Hispanic and non-Hispanic in the one chart. You can see the Hispanic employment in construction increased a lot during this, the housing market boom, and then dropped even more than the overall, in terms of the percentage, it dropped even more than the overall construction employment. After the recession, increased even faster than overall construction workforce. And based on our previous research, and we found Hispanic workers generally are younger, and most of them, more than 75% of them, were foreign-born. And usually they had a lower educational level, and many of them did not have not high school, even the middle school level. So because of a lot of factors that made this group more vulnerable for work-related injuries and illnesses. And that's why we pay more close attention to Hispanic workers. And we regard this group as a higher risk group and need the more close surveillance. I'm not sure if I answer your question or not. And the data also show the overall employment still was lower than before the recession. But Hispanic workers are already very similar level. Yeah. And these workers, yeah.
If I could chime in briefly as well, I can't speak for, why OSHA does it specifically, but I would just, point out that in public health research, it's a common practice to look at different demographic groups, like Sue was saying, to see who is at risk, and that can inform, where prevention efforts are needed. Whereas if you're looking at diseases, you might be dealing with perhaps genetic susceptibilities among certain racial groups. And construction specifically, things that might matter is, potential language barriers and in terms of training delivered. So that's all I wanted to say.
Oh yeah, I think I totally agree with you. Yeah, that's why, and the CPWR, we have a ground we call the disparity studies, and in that study, we pay more close attention to those groups we think they have a higher, or not we think, based on the existing research and the data we have, like the Hispanic workers, younger workers, older workers, and those who worked with small employers. Those are our target group in our surveillance.
Okay.
Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I think that covers why it's a distinct group.
Okay.
Let's see, the next question is also going to be for you, Sue, and it is, can we see the fatal falls by age for after 2010 compared to prior to 2008? Do you have charts by age yet?
Yes, we do. We have that in our chart book, our new chart book. You will see that new book soon. We do. And we also found the older in terms of the distribution. We can see this, since I cannot switch from this slide to this for the chart I already have, but you will see that chart soon. This chart shows this the shift very clearly. In the most recent year data in 2015, you can see the more fatalities among older workers. In terms of the age, we're talking about the aging workforce issues now. So construction workers are getting older, even faster than overall industry. So this fastest increase probably because the labor shortage or new workers in the construction industry, or construction workers have to stay longer because they have to support their own. If they retired, if they do not have a good pension, or they lose their insurance coverage, and before they reach age 65, what could they do? So a lot of reasons explain that, or could contribute that. we have several papers on that. If you are interested in aging workforce issues, particularly in the construction industry, please contact me. I will send you more data and our publication.
Okay, thanks, Sue. The next question is just, can I obtain a copy of this PowerPoint? And yes, I will send that out to everyone either today or tomorrow, along with the recording. The next question is, a lot of the graphs in the presentation and in the last presentation noted something that said the revised OIICS. What does that stand for?
Which one?
So, that's the occupational injury and illness classification system. Is that right? So I might have left out.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, let me explain that. Occupational injury and illness classification system. Because the BLS started to use the new coding system since 2011, the categories of injuries are different. So they are not comparable. But still, we want to say, in terms of the comparison, even they are not directly comparable, we still want to say what's going on in the historical data. So that's why we, on the one hand, we use the historical data. On the other hand, we'd like to distinguish the before and after the coding change. So that's I did not explain that. That's the occupational injury and illness classification system. The current version BLS used is version 2. And the previous, they used the 1997 version. So particular fall injuries, a lot of changes, including the fall by height. BLS did not provide such information before, but they started to provide this information since 2011, which made us possible to provide one chart in today's presentation by height. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is referring to this map and wondering why Virginia has a higher or greater number of stand-down participants than California. And the reason for this is because of government participation. It's an open-ended question. The only classification we get is government, so we don't have a detailed breakdown on that, but it essentially includes military personnel. It can include government, like office workers who do stand-downs focused on slips, trips, and falls, or housekeeping in an office environment, or it can include construction projects that are government projects. So if you broke it down by year, I believe the first year and maybe even the second year, California had higher numbers than Virginia, just based on the sheer amount of construction going on and the number of workers. And then we had a huge, let me go to the next slide, we had a huge bump in government participation, in particular this most recent year, 2016 stand down. So that ended up skewing the numbers in states like Virginia to be much higher. And I believe that actually was the last question. Is there anything else? All right. Well, thank you, Gavin and Sue, for presenting, and thank you, everyone.